Los Angeles Raiders cheerleader Linda Sobek is missing after heading to a photo shoot in an unknown location.
If you have any information regarding Linda, please get in touch with authorities.
Photographer Charles Rathbun has been found guilty of murder in the case of Linda Sobek and will be serving life in prison without parole.
Linda Sobek had a busy day ahead of her on November 16, 1995. She was heading to a photo shoot, and after that she was auditioning for a TV show. However, she never made it to the audition, nor did she call her mother that evening like she usually did. Linda had vanished. Except she hadn't really. She was buried somewhere in the Angeles National Forest after Charles Rathbun had killed her during a photo shoot. Her killer would offer multiple versions of the story to try and paint it all like an accident, but the evidence would soon uncover the truth. Linda had been murdered. Welcome back to the Back of the Archive, and if you're new here, thank you for joining me for another true crime story. If you enjoy this kind of content and format, I'd love for you to subscribe so you don't miss any new videos. Today we're opening the files of the case of Linda Sobek, a model who was just trying to make it in life, but walked right into the arms of her killer. Linda Sobek was born on July 9, 1968 in Los Angeles, California. From a young age, she knew she wanted to be a model, and began working towards getting noticed. She auditioned for the Los Angeles Raiders cheerleading squad, and despite fierce competition, she was chosen. She worked as an NFL cheerleader for around 5 years, and with a good experience behind her, she started pursuing modeling, and landed a few jobs in catalogs, ads, and magazines. After some other auditions, in 1995 she landed a small role in the popular sitcom Married with Children, and that made her consider taking acting seriously, so she started booking other auditions as well as modeling jobs. Linda was always working. Entertainment and modeling industries are very demanding, but she loved what she was doing and didn't mind the hours she put in. Despite working so much, she always made time for her family. Linda had a great relationship with her parents and brother, and spoke to her mother Elaine on the phone almost daily, so on the morning of November 16, 1995, Linda was on the phone with her mom, as usual. The 27-year-old was telling Elaine about the busy day she had ahead of her. She was going to an audition and a costume fitting the afternoon, but first she was going to head to a last-minute photo shoot that just came up. Since it was so last minute, she was running late, so she didn't tell her mother any details about this shoot. Linda just said goodbye to her mother and promised to call her that evening. She was excited for her family barbecue they had planned that weekend. However, Linda and Elaine would never speak to each other again. Hours later, Elaine never got a call back from Linda, and this was unlike her since Linda always liked telling her parents about how her jobs went, especially after a shoot. Elaine instantly suspected something was wrong. Linda's brother Steve told Elaine that Linda was probably just still working. But Elaine called a few of Linda's friends, as well as her roommates, only to discover that nobody knew where she was. Making a few more calls, Elaine discovered that Linda had not shown up to any of her other meetings on auditions that day after she had run off to her photo shoot. So Linda's loved ones wasted no time and reported her missing to authorities. The problem was that nobody knew where Linda's shoot was that day or even who she was meeting with, so police worked even harder in searching for her. They contacted several media outlets and her disappearance was even featured on some channels. For days there was no news about Linda. She had seemingly vanished into thin air, leaving all of her things behind. However, everything changed when a man called the police with information. While he was collecting trash, he had found photographs of a blonde girl at the Angeles National Forest. The National Angeles Forest is 25 miles north of Los Angeles, a location nobody knew Linda would even be at. He found it out that there would be pictures there, but this was a popular location for shoots, so he didn't think much of it. However, days later, when he saw the news about Linda on TV, he checked again, and the girl in the photos looked just like the girl who disappeared. So he went to the police station and gave them the photographs. Meanwhile, another man called the police a couple days after Linda went missing. The 38-year-old man was Charles Rathbun, and he had shared some vital information. He had seen Linda that day. In fact, he met her at a local restaurant. He was a photographer, and they had met to discuss her portfolio and some opportunities he might have for her. After the meeting, he said, they each went their own way. Police went to the restaurant and indeed found Linda's car there. But if Linda had left the restaurant, why did she leave her car behind? The search was then moved around the Angeles National Forest, since that was where Linda's photos were found. And there they found some further evidence. They found a car rental agreement, and the name on it was one they were very familiar with, Charles Rathbun, seemingly the last person who had seen Linda before she vanished. Police searched the car that Charles rented that day, which seemed to be in good condition, but after a thorough investigation, traces of blood were found on the back seat, so police decided it was time to interview Charles as a suspect. When talking to him, Charles had a hard time keeping his story straight. Knowing the police had found evidence, he told them that he asked Linda to work for him that day. He rented the car because he was doing a shoot for Auto Week magazine, and since he wanted some images of the car with a model, he hired Linda. Charles told the police that Linda agreed to do the shoot, so they drove a couple of hours into the desert. Charles wanted to take some pictures of Linda driving the car, and needed her to drive in circles, so he got behind the wheel and showed her how he wanted it to look. It was then that Charles revealed something that changed the course of the entire investigation. According to him, while he was showing Linda how to drive the car, he lost control of the wheel and accidentally crashed into her, causing her to die. Charles didn't know what to do, so he put her body in the car, drove to the Angeles National Forest, and buried her. So the family's worst suspicions were confirmed. Linda was dead. Police found Linda buried in a shallow grave in the forest, and although they had a body and a confession from Charles, something wasn't quite adding up. Forensic investigators found that the car that Charles rented showed no signs of damage and didn't look like it had crashed into anybody. An impact like the one Charles described would have left a considerable mark in the car. Linda's autopsy would also reveal more inconsistencies. Linda had been sexually assaulted before her death, and there were no signs of any injuries to her body that would have been consistent with the story about the crash that Charles told. Instead, the official cause of death was confirmed to be asphyxiation, and the likely method was strangulation. There were also defensive wounds on her body. The model had tried to protect herself from the attacker, who was much larger than she was. Sadly, he had been stronger and had decided to end her life then and there. But who exactly was Charles Rathbun? On the surface, he appeared to be a hard-working photographer. He was well known among advertising agencies and publications, and he was a specialist in automobile shoots. But beyond that professional surface lay a darker side. He was known to have a bad temper and could not handle when things weren't going his way. There were also rumors that he had shown inappropriate behavior in the past with some of the models he hired for shoots. So much, in fact, that 2 particular models refused to work with him. Charles had also been accused of rape in 1979, but he was found not guilty. During his trial, Charles insisted that Linda's death was accidental. However, the fact that he changed his story each time further evidence was found did him no favors. First he said that he and Linda met but parted ways, and then he claimed he accidentally killed her by driving into her when he lost control of the car. And now in the trial, he claimed that while this was all true, Linda hadn't died and she'd instead panicked, so he tried to calm her down, accidentally suffocating her. He insisted he didn't want to kill Linda, and there was no sexual assault. The sex was consensual. He even said that there were photographs that could prove that it was consensual. Several reels of film were found in the desert. 4 of them showed modeling shots of Linda, but the 5th film was pornographic in nature. These are the images that Charles claimed to confirm that their sexual encounter was consensual. However, this was not the case. Further analysis of the photographs revealed that it wasn't possible to confirm who the woman on the images was, since they didn't show her face. But in a more interesting twist, the images were not taken in the same car that Charles had with him that day. The most likely story here is that Charles tried to make advances with Linda, like he'd done to other models in the past, abusing his position of power as their potential employer. However, when she refused him, he got angry and decided to end her life. Charles Rathbun was found guilty of the first-degree murder and sexual assault of Linda Sobek, and he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Linda had her whole life ahead of her and was just trying to make the most of the job she loved. Charles abused that hard work and turned it into something personal. His ego led him to end a 27-year-old's life, and for that he would pay the rest of his life. Thank you for watching this video. If you found it interesting, please like it, and as always, you're welcome to discuss the case in the comments while keeping it respectful towards the victim and their family. Thank you for being here. Stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video.